Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us here today at the Sunshine Cathedral via the website. And we want to welcome you to our worship services whenever you're in the Fort Lauderdale area. If you are in the area, we invite you to worship with us on Sunday mornings at 9 and 10:30 a.m. We're located at 1480 Southwest 9th Avenue. And for those who watch us weekly on the internet, we invite you to check our website often for other listings and programming that we might have that may be of interest to you. And for now, I invite you to come in and worship with us here at the Sunshine Cathedral.
Marianne Williamson has written, "Let me cleave to love in moments when I am tempted by fear. May I remember that there is nothing love cannot do. There is no feeling, circumstance, situation, or relationship so filled with fear that love cannot transform it. Today, I claim the power of love. May my mind be so aligned with love that its power within me feels natural. I wield the power to work miracles with humility and grace. And in these human words, God's voice is heard."
Thanks be to God.
The Apostle Paul wrote, "Let love be genuine. Hate what is evil. Hold fast to what is good. Love one another with mutual affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. Do not lag in zeal. Be ardent in spirit. Serve Christ. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in suffering. Persevere in prayer. Contribute to the needs of the saints. Extend hospitality to strangers. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. In these human words, God's voice is heard." Thanks be to God.
You
Let's take a moment to hold in the light those who have faced Hurricane Harvey. We will send encouragement, of course, and advocate for life-giving policies and procedures. Later in the month, we will probably even take up a special donation for ministry there. But right now, in this moment, let us send love and good wishes to our friends in Texas. And now, let there be peace among us, and let us not be instruments of our own or others' oppression. Amen. In the Hebrew Bible, there is a story about a man named Jephthah. Now, Jephthah was the son of Gilead. Doesn't tell you too much, really. There are about 5 Gileads in the Bible. 2 are places, 3 are people. Well, this is one of the people, Gilead, and he has a son named Jephthah. Now, Jephthah is Gilead's son, but he isn't Mrs. Gilead's son. And so that causes some problems. You see, there was a woman who would keep people company for donations. And Gilead had met her acquaintance and made a donation. At least once. And that's where Jephthah came from. Well, apparently this Jephthah, Gilead brought him home to be raised with Gilead and Mrs. Gilead and the children of Mr. and Mrs. Gilead. But Mrs. Gilead never really warmed up to that. And the children of Mrs. Gilead never really warmed up to that. And so eventually, Jephthah's half-brothers threatened him, and he left home at a young age. Now, what does a young man with no home and few prospects do to survive? Well, Jephthah decided to be all that he could be. He became a warrior. He joined a military force. And not only did he become a warrior, he apparently became a good one. A warrior that people knew about, talked about, would seek when they needed the help of a good warrior. One day, the elders of the community came to Jephthah, the warrior. They were at war with the Ammonites, over land, of course, and they want Jephthah to become a leader in the war effort. And Jephthah reminds them, you know what, nobody wanted me. My mother didn't keep me, my stepmother hated me, my father let me go, my half-brothers didn't want to share their inheritance with me. Why? And nobody said anything when I wound up on the street. Why do you come to me now? And they just were like, well, we need you now, so that changes things, doesn't it? And so he did agree. He said, all right, I'll help you try to defeat the Ammonites. Verse 29 of Judges chapter 11, the storyteller says, then. He's been approached. He's agreed to help. And right then, at that very moment, it says, the Spirit of the Lord came on Jephthah. The Spirit of the Lord came on Jephthah. The Spirit of the Lord was with him. The Spirit of the Lord was already on him, but he didn't know it. It doesn't say that he knew it, it just says that it happened. And then the very next thing, we see Jephthah trying to negotiate with God, trying to get God to be on his side, trying to get God to give him help, trying to get God to be aware of him and to care about him. He must not have realized that the Spirit of the Lord was already on him. And so he starts to bargain with God. And he wants to make the most impressive bargain he can to make sure that God is paying attention. And so he promises God that if he happens to be victorious in battle, or heck, even if he just survives it, if he's not killed in battle, but especially if he actually happens to win it, that he will do something amazing. He will do something way off the charts to show how grateful he is. What can he do? So he says, you know what, God, this is what I'll do. When I get home victorious from my battle, the first person who walks out of my front door of my house, I will kill them. I love when people quote the Bible at me. That makes me so happy. That makes me happy. Well, the Bible clearly says, pull up a seat. We got some talking to do about the Bible. But in any case, Jephthah, the protagonist of the story, this is his bargain with God. Whoever, now who's going to be in his house? His worst enemy? Who lives in his house? I mean, for heaven's sake, but the first person who comes out of my house, I will kill them for God. He doesn't need to make any bargain with God. The Spirit of the Lord was already on him. But he doesn't know that. And so he offers God a human sacrifice. Now, God doesn't want human sacrifices, never has. No one has to be crushed in order for God to be pleased. And he didn't have to win God's favor. He didn't have to strike a deal with God. The Spirit of the Lord was already on him. And if God is omnipresent, we don't have to do anything special to get God's attention. Wherever we are, God is. And if God is omnipresent love, and I believe that God is, then we don't have to do bizarre or hateful or mean things to get God's favor. In fact, if anything we're going to get God's favor, surely cruelty wouldn't be it. Hate is an expression of fear, and perfect love casts out all fear. And God, by the way, is perfect love. So hate and God really don't go together. It's like night and day, like reality and illusion, like oil and water. They aren't, fear and hatred, those are the opposite of love. And God is love. So when religion is hateful or fear-based, it is using God's name in vain. The Spirit of the Lord was already on him. And yet he offered God viciousness as an act of worship. How misguided. As it turns out, Jephthah did win his battle. Probably not because he offered a human holocaust, but just because he was militarily prepared. But in any case, he did win, and so he's ready to keep his promise, his vow to God. And so he goes home ready to revel in his victory, and someone comes skipping out of his house. He promised God he would slaughter the first person who came out of the house, and now he's home, and someone comes out to greet him, his daughter. Who did he think lived there? Was he paying no attention at all? Well, maybe, and someone in seminary really made this case. They really argued with me about this one time. He said, yeah, but he didn't know it was going to be his daughter. He thought it was going to be a chicken or a goat. And yet it didn't say, I will kill whatever comes out of my house. He said, I will kill whoever. Not whoever the chicken, whoever the person. And so he didn't think the first person out would be his daughter. Well, what if his daughter's neighbor had come to play with her? That would have made it okay. It was the daughter's friend. It's just, you can't fix it. And she comes out, and Jephthah he falls apart. She comes out and he cries out. He tells his daughter, you've ruined me. I promised God that I would kill the first person who came out of my house when I returned home from battle. Why did it have to be you? Because she lives there. Because for some bizarre reason, she was happy you made it home safely. I bet she regrets that now. Because who would have guessed that you've offered God a human sacrifice? Most sane people wouldn't do that. Jephthah condemns his daughter to death and blames her for it. All because of some ridiculously terrible theology. He rejects her because of his bad theology and says it's her fault. Is Jephthah's daughter in the house? Rejected and then blamed for the rejection. Now, Jephthah himself, we're all victims of victims, right? Jephthah himself had been rejected, remember. Rejected by his family. His mother was scorned by society. His stepmother hated him for who he was. His father abandoned him. His half-brothers threatened him. He never felt loved or affirmed. Why would he assume that God's love was unconditional or everlasting? How would he know that the Spirit of the Lord was on him, with him, in him? People who were meant to love him didn't. So it's no surprise that he has no idea what divine love is. He's not even had very much human love. How would he know what divine love is. Divine love doesn't ask for suffering. Divine love doesn't demand heartbreak. Divine love doesn't sanction abuse. But Jephthah didn't know that. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people are still sacrificing their children to appease a God who was never angry. A lot of people have no idea that God is omnipresent love, a love that will hold us for all eternity. What if Jephthah, or at least his daughter, had found a different kind of church? If Jephthah's daughter went to Sunshine Cathedral, she would have told her dad, "I'm sorry you made a criminally insane promise to God, but I don't have to submit to your nonsense." If Jephthah was a Sunshine Cathedral parishioner, someone would have told him. I bet almost everyone would have told him. Your parents made mistakes, big ones. But God is bigger than your past. God is bigger than your pain. God is bigger than your fears. You don't have to hurt others to keep God from hurting you. What if Jephthah had been told that the Spirit of the Lord was already on him? Always on him, with him, because God is omnipresent, all-inclusive, unconditional love. What if Jephthah had been blessed with genuine love rather than tormented by fear, rejection, and violence? This story might have had a very different ending. We prayed earlier for those recovering from the ravages of Harvey, but another storm hit last week. The storm wasn't wind and rain in Texas, but was hate and hubris coming out of Tennessee. The so-called Nashville Statement was composed of 14 condemnations. That's two a day for a whole week. 14 condemnations of LGBTQ people, unprovoked. This wasn't in response to something. Just some evangelical leaders got together in Nashville and said, you know what we should do? We should list 14 reasons why we should hate LGBTQ people. 150 evangelical religious leaders. And they called it the Nashville Statement. The mayor of Nashville spoke out against that. She said, don't put our name on that. And they're like, oh no, it's not about like Nashville. That's just where we are. That's just, it's just the place. And once again, just a condemnation of people whose stories they don't know, whose lives they've not witnessed, just their promotion of bad theology. And once again, we witness bad theology, stirring fear and stoking hate and rejecting people in the name of God. It's Jephthah's daughter all over again. And the pain and the loss and the suffering continues because people cling to their bad theology rather than simply letting love be genuine. If the God that you worship requires you to reject people, to torment people, then that is probably a false God. If the God that you worship tells you that someone else's love is a reason for damnation, that God is probably a false God. And if it's not a false God, then I am all for some atheism. I would not serve that God. No loving person would serve a God who demands hate. Let love be genuine, we heard the Apostle Paul say. And if your theology won't let you recognize genuine love, it's bad theology. Let love be genuine, Paul said, and then he explained how to do it. He says, hate injustice, that's all. Don't hate people, don't hate love, don't hate difference, don't hate diversity. Hate injustice, hate evil, hate hatred, and that's it. Nothing else should be hated. Hate injustice. Hold fast to what builds up, what heals, what comforts, what encourages. Be optimistic, especially in times of suffering. Pray in good times and bad times. Be generous. Be kind, especially to those who are suffering. Be happy for others when they are blessed. And be sad when others are hurting. That's how you show love. It's just that simple. Let love be genuine. And how do you do that? You just try not to be a jerk. Another event happened this last week. It was the passing of self-help guru Louise Hay. Louise was a voice of hope and compassion during the worst of the AIDS crisis, and she spent her entire ministry giving people the tools they needed to help forgive themselves and others, and to love themselves. She taught people how to speak kindly to themselves. She offered a sort of spiritual self-therapy. She helped us learn to love and appreciate ourselves more. She said, loving others is easy when I love and accept myself. If the Nashville Statement contributors loved themselves, they wouldn't need to hate the LGBTQ children of God to feel righteous. And Louise Hay also said, when people start to love themselves more each day, it's amazing how their lives get better. If we will dare to love ourselves, we won't internalize the hatred that is aimed at us. A Course in Miracles teaches God is not partial. All God's children have God's total love, and all God's gifts are freely given to everyone alike. If only Jephthah had trusted that God is love. Howard Thurman, a theologian, civil rights leader, and mentor to Dr. King, said, Jesus rejected hatred because he saw that hatred meant death to the mind, death to the spirit, and death to communion with the Creator. Thurman knew that we cannot experience the God that is perfect love if our religion is based on who to hate, who to condemn, who to reject. If the contributors to the Nashville Statement understood God as love rather than as a source of fear and hatred, the queer children of God would be safer today. There's a lot of hatred, a lot of fear, and a lot of ugliness in the world, but there is also a lot of hope and a lot of goodness and a lot of love. Our job is to embrace the love. Our job is to let love be genuine. Our job is to know that God is love and we are made in God's image. It may take a lot of effort to remember that, but we absolutely must. In fact, that must be our primary mission, to affirm that God is love and to model a worship of God that absolutely rejects fear and hatred. Let that be the Sunshine Cathedral statement. And this is the good news. Amen.
Thank you for joining us today here at the Sunshine Cathedral. If you're ever in the Fort Lauderdale area, we invite you to stop by and worship with us on Sunday mornings at 9 and 10:30 a.m. If you'd like to make a donation to the Sunshine Cathedral, or if you'd like to find out other resources that the Cathedral has to offer, please visit us at www.sunshinecathedral.org. Until the next time, we look forward to seeing you here at the Sunshine Cathedral.